differing ideas and intercultural maybe tensions in political ideas between our Kasamas who are from the Philippines and our Kasamas who are children of the diaspora. How do you intend to not only address but navigate these conversations academically, empathetically, and equitably?
So I think especially in an org as big as Kasama Hut, we need to understand that, of course, as much as we are a Filipino organization, there is not just Filipinos that are in this organization. And it's important to, like I said in my speech, explore those parallels, not just within our own culture, but in the cultures of those around us. And when it comes to also acknowledging the Filipino community in the motherland and the Filipino American community, it's important for us to be sensitive to these cultures and ideas and to validate all of them, because we have to understand that as though we may not see each other eye to eye, we know that everybody has their own reason for thinking these ideologies. And that is how we all grow as not just our individual selves, but as a community and an organization, to analyze those different ideologies and really reflect on our own experiences and memories.
To build off of that, I also think that this is why it's important to emphasize listening to each other. Even though we don't agree, it's still important to listen and respect to what each other has to say, especially when we're all coming from so many different backgrounds and different places. It's just even more of a reason to not only listen to hear what the other person is trying to say, but also to grow your own mind and accepting what others have to say too.
As you know, CAPACDs are responsible for planning Filipino-American History Month. Specifically, this is during the summer. What will you do to ensure that there's proper communication between you and your co, as well as the YPSP department in this planning process?
First, I would be in touch with my co over the summer through text, and we would be in touch with YPSP over email. Since it's over the summer and we'd be doing it remotely, it'd be a little bit harder. But at least over the summer we can continue to plan, so that when we get back to campus, we can start full start planning with the logistics and stuff right away.
Quoting the Kappa CDs of this year, at my own personal Ate Jordan, when I was seeking for advice from her, she reminded me that especially in this Kappa CD position, it is important to plan more ahead so you have less work to do in the moment. So as Mia said, we will be working hand in hand as your hopefully next future co's of next year to definitely plan out Filipino American History Month, to continue these topics that have been laid before us, and to continue and spark interest in our culture.
Well, more first.
Many students tend to stay within the university level, engaging mostly with campus events and discussions while overlooking the broader political and community issues affecting the city, region, and beyond. Can you share an example of a time when you engaged with a political or community issue outside of an academic setting, and how that experience shaped your understanding of advocacy or leadership?
I think this is a definitely timely manner because we just concluded our recent presidential elections in this country. Definitely engaging in the election and reminding other fellow students to vote as well. That is something that I found very important. As much as we may not see it affect us as much, especially as the incoming the freshman that I was with around that time, we may not have felt the gravity of participating in such elections as we just turned of age. But in that position and in that moment, I definitely felt the gravity and severity to share with my fellow students that as much as we are only beginning to take our first steps in the real adult world, it is our duty to participate in these conversations, not just on conversations about chemistry or biology, but what is really pressing about our future.
Something that I would really like to push is the idea that the things that we're learning about in workshops and events is something to go back to your family and talk to. Because personally, I've spoken to my family after some of the workshops and teachings that I've been to this school year, and I've learned more about my family's own experience with the history that we're talking about. And I think this is really important to help put together our ideas with our personal lives, even though we may not have, well, we wouldn't have been there, but to kind of like put it in our heads that like the people that we know in our lives were affected by it and still are to this day, even if it doesn't show in our everyday lives.
Yeah, Jada, Jordan. This is actually connected to Molly's question, but although we are a Filipino organization and a lot of what goes on is about like spreading more information about Filipino culture, Filipino American culture, and also educating Kasamas and educating ourselves, a big piece of community and political affairs as well, and just being involved in community and politics, is coalition and connection and unity, not just as a group, but also with other groups, especially because there are a bunch of other culturally focused clubs, not just on campus, but also beyond in our larger community. How do you plan to build coalition, show support, and engage with these other culturally focused clubs on campus, or how do you also plan to extend that maybe even beyond campus if that's something that you're also thinking about?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yes, sorry, it was a little jumbled. But although we are a Filipino organization and like we are about spreading information regarding Filipino culture and politics and Filipino American history and politics, it is also important to engage in intercultural coalition and engaging other cultures and supporting and uplifting each other. How do you plan on interacting with the other culturally focused clubs on campus and supporting them, or even beyond campus if that's something that you're also interested in?
So as a Filipino organization, as much as our main focus is the Filipino and Filipino American experiences, as I've stated earlier, we do have Kasamas that are not Filipino identified. And I think it is important that we, like I said in my speech, to explore those parallels and to really bridge those connections with other cultures, because there are other cultures who have gone through the same things as us. And even in a historical perspective, when we think about Spanish colonization, the Japanese occupation, we were not the only group of people to experience such a thing. So I think to reach out to other organizations that have had those similarities with us, or even cultural organizations that have very huge differences of us, it is important for us, especially in the community aspect, that we come together and we talk about our experiences, share more, and grow as individuals.
Charles's answer is actually very similar to what I was going to say, and Jada's question reminded me of the SPAM event during PAM this school year. That was a really good example of connecting clubs that have similar, or their cultures kind of like have an overlap in what they've seen in their history, and I think it's really important to continue events like that one, and to branch out even more to more organizations on campus and outside in our greater community.
First one, thank you for running. And second, so my question was, sorry, I was busy. So part of your position entails overseeing the Community and Political Affairs Committee, or CPAC. In the past year, CPAC has been utilized to assist aspects of the pillars, such as helping with PAM events and researching for infographics such as the newscast. How will you plan on growing this committee going forward? And how will you ensure your committee retains active engagement and a willingness to learn?
So for CPAC in itself, it is like in its name, community-based, and also talking about the politics behind it. And sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah, for sure. The question was, how will you plan on growing this committee going forward, and how will you ensure your committee retains active engagement and a willingness to learn?
Yes. So when it comes to formulating a committee, or even talking to the community as a whole, I think I would share my passion on a personal level and talk about the importance of community and political affairs. Because as I said in the previous question, that it is important that now, as we are advancing further in our lives, it is important to, as much as we would choose not to engage in these hard conversations and into these politics, because these are the determining politics that will thus determine our future in our lives. So I think to definitely show to people that this is a pillar that is important, even outside of Kasamahan and our own personal lives, we need to engage in such and to definitely speak out on what really lies deep in our hearts.
I think a way that we could have people be active in CPAC is like if we're not meeting like during this month or this certain time for like a certain event, it's just to like send out like an article or a journal article to kind of like continue our conversations about community and political affairs. So then we're still like talking about it and also making sure that like we're listening to their ideas for like PAM or any other events or workshops that they have or organizations that they think that we should have a collaboration with.
This will be our last question for this portion.
The community and political pillar often revolves around pretty heavier topics and stories. It's important that we amplify these stories and voices, but it's also important that we take care of ourselves and our well-being in the process. How will you approach emotional and physical fatigue in this position if it should arise?
I think the beauty of this position really lies that this is not just a one director position, and that I am blessed to have a co by my side in this position. And I think this is where we really instill the community in this aspect and come together as two people to fall back on each other when we have to bring to you guys these subjects. Because truth of it all is, it is really hard to talk about these politics, and it is very recent politics in our own nation when back in January or February, these executive orders that Trump would dish out, even when it came to federal funding for universities, and we were all very scared. It's very important to engage in these topics and to confide in one another, not just as co's, but with the entire community of Kasamahan. And that is the whole reason why I fell in love with this organization.
I think that a way other than leaning on each other for support and CPAC for support is just making sure that as co's we're also staying on top of our planning, so then we're not rushing to plan things and therefore making it stressful when it doesn't need to be. Because personally, like in my own life with studying and like catching up on like chores and stuff, I like to stay on top of it so that it doesn't all pile up. And I think I would definitely do this in this position.